Okay, we're on NTI day 13. This is the math video. So go ahead and turn to this page with me, lesson 11.3. This lesson is all about classifying and comparing quadrilaterals. So we know from previous lessons that a quadrilateral, that prefix quad means four. A quadrilateral is a four-sided polygon. So when we're talking about four-sided polygons, we can talk about them a little bit more specifically, which is why there are so many different types of quadrilaterals. We're going to talk about, let's see, 5 of them today, okay? So let's look at this page right here. We're going to skip this part right now because I want to go ahead and give us a little background on what's here. So it says, complete the sentence that describes each type of quadrilateral. So a general quadrilateral that has four sides and four angles is just a quadrilateral. So any four-sided polygon can be called a quadrilateral. Then we can get a little bit more specific and we can talk about a parallelogram. And a parallelogram has opposite sides that are congruent. Remember, that means that they're the same size and the same shape. And parallel. So when we're talking about parallel lines, this line is parallel to this line, and this line is parallel to this line. That means that they will never cross, so you might think of that like train tracks, that they'll always be equidistant apart from each other, and they're never going to cross or intersect, okay? Then we can talk about a rectangle. A rectangle is a special parallelogram with four right angles, and this should say two pairs. I don't know why it says four. Two pairs of parallel sides. So here's our four right angles for our rectangle, and this side is parallel to this side is parallel to this side, and remember, these marks mean that this is the same length as this side, this is the same length as this side. Okay? Then we can talk about a rhombus, and a rhombus kind of looks like a slanted square. It's a parallelogram with four congruent sides. So that means that all of these sides are the same length. Alright, then we get to the most specific type of quadrilateral, and that's a square. A square is a special parallelogram with four congruent sides and four right angles. And you can see that on here. Remember, those marks mean that they are the same length as the other ones in the figure. And then a trapezoid is kind of a different type of quadrilateral because it only has one pair of parallel sides. And we can see on here that this side is parallel to this side. Those sides are never going to intersect or cross. Okay? So let's go back up to unlock the problem and see if we can answer the question that's down here at the bottom. So it says the seating chart for baseball fields has many four-sided figures or quadrilaterals. What types of quadrilaterals can you find in the seating chart? There are 5 special types of quadrilaterals. You can classify quadrilaterals by their properties, such as parallel sides and perpendicular sides. Parallel lines are lines that are always the same distance apart. Perpendicular lines are lines that intersect to form right angles. Okay, so we would say that we see a square, we would say we see a square right here, because all of these vertices form right angles. All of the sides are the same length, and that's the other thing I was trying to think of. We would say that these are perpendicular because they cross like a T. What it wants us to do is it wants us to look at our sides up here on our figures. So when we look at, let's see, so when we look like right here, I would say that those are mostly quadrilaterals. This one looks like it could be a trapezoid because this side looks like it is parallel to this side, but it's kind of hard to tell because there's a little curve in there. But if we were together right now, we would be talking about this a lot more. But I feel like right now I'm just talking to myself, and I'm kind of mostly seeing just different types of quadrilaterals. Right here we could say that these are definitely rectangles. This one kind of looks like a trapezoid to me because it's not exactly rectangular. Okay, so if we were together, we would talk about these a little bit more. So let's see if we can talk about this down here. So the types of quadrilaterals you can find in the seating chart of the field are, well, in the seating chart, let's see, we found rectangles, we found trapezoids, and since we found rectangles, that means that we also had to find parallelograms, because a parallelogram is a type of, or a rectangle is a type of parallelogram, sorry. And then I don't really see a rhombus or a square in the seating chart of this part. Now we could say that this is a rhombus, a rectangle, or a square, but that's talking about the baseball diamond, so I don't really think it fits with that question. Alright, so let's flip the page. And then we're going to do something different for this part. So if we were together right now, we would be taking different notes. And I've written those notes out, and you can copy them down too if you think that it will be helpful for you. And we're just going to go over them together. And then we're going to use these notes to answer these questions over here. So what I'm going to show you is the same thing that I could explain to you here, but this is the way that I'm more used to doing it, so let's talk about this. Alright, so when we're talking about quadrilaterals, there are different types of quadrilaterals, and it's all based on their sides and their angles, okay? So when we talk about polygons, a polygon is any closed 2D figure that has straight lines, okay? And remember, we name polygons by their sides. So triangles, rectangles, or triangles, quadrilaterals, pentagons, hexagons, heptagons, all of those are named by how many sides they have, okay? Then we can get even more specific and we can talk about quadrilaterals. So that is any four-sided polygon. So it's a four-sided figure that is 2D, has straight lines, and it's closed, okay? Alright. Then let's talk about trapezoid, because a trapezoid is kind of its own type of quadrilateral. It really doesn't go with the other types, other than it does have four sides, but it only has one pair of parallel sides. So the type of trapezoid that you might be used to seeing might look like this. So that would be an example of a trapezoid because this side's parallel to this side. And then another trapezoid that you probably are used to seeing is one that has a right angle. And it would look like this. So this side is parallel to this side. Okay? So trapezoid has one pair of parallel sides. Alright, then we switch over to the other side, and the reason that these are not connected is because now we're talking about quadrilaterals that have two pairs of parallel sides. So they're still quadrilaterals. What, Luke?
Guess what? When Craig said that's nasty.
Yeah, I'm busy. Go on. Alright, that was Luke. He wanted to talk to me about his TV show. Sorry. Alright, so here's parallelograms. Parallelograms have two pairs of parallel sides. So usually what you'll see, and they'll call it a parallelogram, is like a slanted rectangle. So if we drew something like this, we would say that this side is congruent to this side, and this side is congruent to this side. So that means that they're the same shape and length here, but no right angles. We're only talking about sides with parallelograms. Okay? So then another type of parallelogram, and you'll see how this kind of branches off into two things. One of them is based on its angles, the other one is based on its sides. So a rectangle has 4 right angles, but the sides do not have to be congruent. So this side would be congruent to this side is congruent to this side. So opposite sides are parallel and congruent, and it has 4 right angles. Okay, then we can talk about a rhombus, and a rhombus is like a diamond shape, or like a slanted square sort of, and it has 4 equal sides. So the angles of a rhombus don't matter, it just has to have 4 equal sides. So, and this kind of looks like sort of like a short fat parallelogram is the way that I see that. So all of these sides are the same length, okay? But notice the angles are, some of them are obtuse, some of them are acute, okay? Then we get to the most specific type of quadrilateral, and that's a square. A square has 4 equal sides and 4 right angles. And I messed up on my square, so that's why that extra line is there. So you can see my 4 right angles, and you can see that all my sides are the same length. Okay. So here's what I want you to really understand about this, and this is what's important about it, is when we start at the top, this is called a hierarchy of quadrilaterals. That's a really big word. But when we're talking about the hierarchy of quadrilaterals, the lower down we go, the more specific we get. Okay? And then when we start at the bottom and work our way up, we can name that figure any of the names above it. Okay? So let's talk about what that means. So I can call a square because it has 4 equal sides and 4 right angles. I can also call it a rhombus because it has 4 equal sides. I can call a square a rectangle because it has 4 right angles. I can call a square a parallelogram because it has 2 pairs of parallel sides. I can call a square a quadrilateral because it's a 4-sided polygon. Okay? So those are all names that I can give to a square, but the best name for it is a square because that recognizes its sides and its angles. Okay? So just because I have a rectangle does not mean that it's a square. But every square is a rectangle because to be a rectangle, a quadrilateral just has to have 4 right angles. And every square has 4 right angles. So every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. Okay? So trapezoids can never be called anything over on this side of the list. We can only call a trapezoid, a quadrilateral, or a polygon. Okay? And then the way that the list works, like if we're talking about a rhombus, all rhombuses, wait, let me say that, hold on, I'm saying it the wrong way. All squares are rhombuses, but not all rhombuses are squares. Because to be a square, it has to have 4 right angles, Well, not every rhombus has 4 right angles. It only has to have 4 equal sides. Okay? So when we look at it from the bottom, whatever you're at, it's everything above it. Okay? But, so the farther down we go, the more specific we get. And when we go up, the more general we get. Okay? Alright, so I hope that's kind of helpful for you. So we're going to use this page. And if you want to write this out, that's the great thing about videos, is you can pause it and write it out to help you with your work for later. Or you could even make a screenshot of this and look back at it later. Okay, so let's work through some of these questions. So complete the sentences by writing always, sometimes, or never. A rhombus is always, sometimes, or never a square. Well, a rhombus can be a square, but it's not always. So it is sometimes. A parallelogram is sometimes a rectangle, a rhombus is always a parallelogram, because a rhombus comes off of parallelogram. So a rhombus is always a parallelogram. A trapezoid is never a parallelogram, because remember I said that what's over here and what's over here are not the same, because a parallelogram has to have 2 pairs of parallel sides. A trapezoid has to, or can only have 1 pair of parallel sides. So we're going to write never on that line. And a square is always a rhombus, because remember what's down here, we can call it anything above it. Alright, we're going to skip we're going to skip number 2. Explain why the circle for parallelograms does not intersect the circle for trapezoid. So these don't intersect because a trapezoid only has 1 pair of parallel sides, and a parallelogram has to have 2 pairs of parallel sides. You can write that down if you want to, but you don't have to. Alright, flip to the next page. Okay, we're going to go over share and show, and we're going to use this quadrilateral to answer those questions. So it says measure the sides. We're not able to measure right now because we don't have rulers with us, but I'm going to tell you that this side is congruent to this side, and this side is congruent to this side. So that means that they are the same length. So are any of the sides congruent? Yes. And we marked those with our marks, with our hash marks. B says how many right angles, if any, does the quadrilateral have? Well, to have right angles, it would have to have the little square in the corner like this one does, and it would have to be perpendicular. So this has no right angles, or we could write 0. I just realized what the way the question read. How many pairs of parallel sides, if any, does the quadrilateral have? So how many pairs? Well, it has 2 pairs, because this is 1 pair, this is another pair. And then what name could we give to quadrilateral ABCD? I think the best name for it would be a parallelogram. Okay, the next one says classify the quadrilateral in as many ways as possible. Write quadrilateral, parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, square, trapezoid. So all of these are going to be quadrilaterals. You're going to write that word for every single one, and that's including the on your own part down here. So I'm going to write quadrilateral on this one. And I'm going to go ahead and write it here because I know both of them are. Okay? Then I want to look and see, okay, are any of these a parallelogram? Well, I can tell by looking at this and by looking back, that's a rectangle. It's got 4 right angles and it has 2 pairs of parallel sides. So if it's a rectangle, that means it's also a parallelogram. So I'm going to write parallelogram. And I'm going to write rectangle. Because we want to give it as many names as possible. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. Alright, then this one, we know it's a quadrilateral, and this side is congruent to this side, and it looks like these sides are parallel. So, I'm going to say that looks an awful lot like the trapezoid that I drew here, which means that the only other name we can give to it is quadrilateral. So, this is a quadrilateral and a trapezoid. Okay, so the on your own part down here, you're going to do what we did with these. You're going to give it every name that you can. Remember, all of them are going to be quadrilateral, so that needs to be listed on every single one, plus looking at its specific attributes, at its specific parts, its angles and its sides. Okay? On the next page, let's see. If you want to work through these, you can for extra practice, but I'm not going to require it. You don't have to do numbers 8 through 11, but you can do them if you want to. Okay? I do want you to do number 12, and I do want you to do all of this page and the back of it. Okay? That's going to be good review for you. Okay, so if you have questions, you've got my email, you've got my phone number, you can text me, you can message me on Dojo. Remember, use this, do a screenshot of it, or write your own out so that you have it to look back at. So that's today's video for math. I will talk to you again tomorrow. Call me, email me, text me if you have questions, if you need help. Use this paper. This is important. This is everything that you need to know about quadrilaterals. Alright, I love you. Goodbye.